So I'm just about to hop on the ice for a skate, but do you remember the full off-ice workout that I gave you maybe a week or two ago? I want to dive into that a little bit more, give you a few more examples of exercises that specifically translate onto the ice and how they specifically translate onto the ice, and how, you know, doing goalie specific stamina is going to give you like 10 times the return of just, you know, doing your normal track workout or bike workout or going for a run. So let's go back into the gym and go through a few of these things a little bit more in depth. There is a ton of stuff that you could do for training, and some of it might even help you stop more pucks. But doing the right things will help you stop a lot more pucks. And I don't expect you to know the difference between which is which. I'm an exercise physiologist. I studied this stuff in university for 6 years. I've been a strength coach for, I think we're coming up on 25 years, for goodness sakes. But so let's chat through how exactly this works. And again, you saw the workout that I posted a few weeks ago, giving you the full workout. But now I want to go through it step by step to kind of help you understand why this is a better way for a goalie to train than that. I also want to try and help dispel the myth that it's just hard, that, you know, well, I want to be the hardest worker. Well, yes, I want you to work hard too, but I only want you working hard on the right things. So, you know, there are lots of really hard workouts. Hard workout, you know, would be 6 rounds of a 400-meter sprint, plus a 15-time single arm kettlebell snatch on each arm, and do that 6 rounds for time. Or, you know, if you did a 60-second bike sprint with 30 seconds rest and you did that 10 times in a row, that would be really hard. If we did 6 sets of 4 reps of squats, and then we did box jumps, and then we did jump rope, you know, our legs would be gassed. That would be really, really hard. But that's not really going to pay dividends on the ice. I mean, sometimes almost anything will help. If you're really out of shape, and almost doing anything is going to help improve it. But we're always trying to find, hey, what's going to give this goalie the least wear and tear and give them the maximum results on the ice. So that's what we're going to walk through today. Let's start with mobility training, because I think that's one of the most, well, man, so much of it's misunderstood, but it's one of the most misunderstood areas, because you want to stretch and you want to get the splits, and it's really just about stretching and trying to stretching and trying to lengthen the muscle. But that's not what goaltending mobility is about. When you just stretch a muscle, you almost put it in a position where it's vulnerable, you know, where it's sort of at the end of its rope, so to speak, and with no control. So when you get out there in these sort of uncontrolled desperation movement patterns, that really increases your risk of getting a tear out there. So mobility training, what we want it to be, and what you saw in that workout that I posted a couple weeks ago, is get into those end range positions, but then generate tension. So that for 2 reasons. Number one, we have number one. So that we have some strength in that lengthened position, because also you don't want to get out there like a starfish, spread all out, and then have no way to get back compact, ready to make that next save. It works great if you get the puck the first time, but if you don't manage to get the puck the first time and you're sprawled out across the ice, then they're just going to pop it in over top of you. So you need a way that you can get in those lengthened positions, but then also get back compact, ready to move. The second part of it is that our mobility, or the range of motion that we can use on the ice, is limited to a large extent by our nervous system. So our brain knows that we're weak in this position. So it's like, no, they're protective mechanisms. They're actually reflexes that will stop us from going there. So even if when I'm watching TV, some of you have probably felt this, you stretch at home and you can get way, way out here in your stretches. But then when you're on the ice, it's like, I'm stuck. Like I can't get nearly as far as I do when I'm stretching at home in front of the TV. And it's because your brain, so thank your brain, is smart, and it's limiting you from getting there. So when we do a stretch, let's just look at a really quick example. Let's say we're going to do a half kneeling groin stretch, and we'll do the forward one. I like to do a more of an upright one, but let's just go here. This is one that you probably use quite a bit. Well, instead of just trying to stretch here and get myself as lengthened out as possible, let me move back a bit so you can see better. What I want to do is get in this position so where I feel the stretch. I'm going to hold that stretch for 15 to 30 seconds, but now I'm going to start pushing this foot down into the floor, gradually building up tension. So now I've got these adductors in a lengthened position. Now I'm creating isometric tension, and I can build that up to a maximum voluntary contraction. So I'm building that tension up, and I'll do that for 15 to 30 seconds. Then I'm going to work the muscles on the opposite side. So I was just pushing down into the floor, working these muscles. Now I'm going to almost try to lift my leg off the floor or pull myself deeper into the splits using the muscles, or not the splits, but this half groin, using the muscles on the outside of my hip, and I'll do that for about 15 to 30 seconds. And then finally, I'm just going to relax. I'm not going to come out of this position. I'm just going to stop pushing or stop pulling and just let the stretch take over. So that's, one of the techniques that we use to build strength at length. And then we also have those controlled articular rotations, some of the movement flows that you've seen if you've done the butterfly challenge. If you don't know what the butterfly challenge is, shame on you. It's a free 14-day flexibility program that I created for you guys. Gives you a wider butterfly flare in 2 weeks or less. You can get it. It's free. I'll put a link somewhere. But that's sort of how we build that mobility. I guess the last little thing that I have to tell you about this is that nobody cares if you can do the splits. And I've asked every single elite goaltending coach I've ever talked to, Mitch Korn, Mike Valley, head of Swedish goaltending development, head of Finnish goaltending development, head of Slovakian, you get the idea. No, none of them want you doing the splits. Nobody cares if you can do the splits. You shouldn't be doing a save in the splits anyway. I know it looks very, very cool, but it greatly increases your risk of injury. And most of us just don't have the hips that let us get the splits. So you're going to be spending time maybe trying to get something that you shouldn't really be using on the ice, because once you're in the splits, you're pretty much there. That doesn't give you much of a second option. So you're spending all this time to work on a movement pattern that you actually don't have the opportunity to use very often. You actually shouldn't be using it even when that opportunity presents itself, rather than working on movements that you genuinely will use multiple times during a game, like your butterfly flare, like getting a better RVH position so it doesn't feel like your knee and your ankle are going to explode. You get the idea. So that is all I'm going to say about mobility for now. Let's talk about strength next. So I just have dumbbells because it's convenient. The power rack is over there and I didn't want to move the camera, to be honest. But even if you use squats or deadlifts, a lot of that is in this pattern, which is just bilateral sort of neutral stance training. So your feet are fixed, they're hip width apart, and it's just kind of straight up and down. And it's not bad. You can certainly use those. We certainly use at certain times in the season. We use front squats. We use hex bar deadlift, things like that. But then we also want to work our body in different types of patterns. So a really simple variation would be just to go to a staggered stance. So doing some split squat work, so that now there's a little bit of different sort of length and tension relationships across our hips, and we have to work to stabilize and balance a little bit more what we're doing. For goalies and skaters, but I think for goalies, a lot of what gets missed is a lot of our training is in the sagittal plane, kind of forward and back, but so much of your movement is actually in the frontal plane, pushing from the frontal plane, doing a forward lunge, and I'm not saying you should never do a forward lunge, but that isn't really a movement that you'll ever use. You know, doing a lateral lunge, now that's a little bit more in your wheelhouse. So we want to see more bits of sort of frontal plane movement. So if you come out, you'll stack your shoulder, hip, knee, and ankle, and you kind of learn how to get in that power position even when you're in a lateral lunge position. So some goalies, you'll be interesting because they might be way here, and then they can't get over that foot, they can't get stacked, or they'll be here with their hip outside. Again, not a strong position. So off the ice, we can use that strength training to find that good power position, and then, you know, drive out of that in a lateral way. As a goalie, you also make a lot of your bread and butter from down here in this low position, and this is where you'll really feel it too. If you're working, you know, kind of along the goal line and you're down in your butterfly, and then, you know, maybe you're up and back down and over, and that's really a hard load on your legs. So when we do our strength training, we will add in some local muscular endurance work as well. You know, maybe something as simple even as staying in this bottom half range of motion to get some extra reps on your split squat, for example, or getting out here into this sort of peek around the post position and then getting some squat lateral in like that. So not to say that you shouldn't do anything that's bilateral. There's lots of good, or sagittal plane, there's lots of good things you can do to just help build up that foundation of strength. But we also want to be including some of the frontal plane work, and then we move on to do quite a bit of single leg strength training too, because that requires a ton of stability in the hip, and it also really highlights that, you know, if you can do it well on one side or not, and not well on the other, there's a side-to-side imbalance there somewhere. Or if, you know, you're very strong bilaterally, but then when we get you in a single leg position, everything falls apart. That tells us a lot about the stability that you have in your joints, and that we really need to work more on that. So we just talked about the direction of force production, building strength. The exact same thing goes for building speed. So not to say you can't do bounds or you shouldn't do straight, you know, hurdle hops, but you also then need to translate that over into lateral movements, and lateral movements where you're actually decelerating and stabilizing in that position as if you'd be ready to make a save. And then adding in the fact that, oh, sometimes, you know, sometimes I'm going from the ice level to move across and finding my balance. So looking at those elements for your speed and power training, not just your strength training. With core training, I think we get so caught up in trying to do the really cool looking core training stuff before we even have that foundation built. So one thing that I think fakes out some of the athletes that I work with privately or at camps is I'll start them just on side plank from their elbows. Let me show you exactly what I mean. So I'll start them just from this position. So my knees are bent to 90 degrees, my elbows right under my shoulder. I'm in this nice side plank position, and I'll have them hold that for 30 to 60 seconds. We'll always get the question, oh, can I do this from my feet? No, is the answer. Because the reason I started doing this from the knees is that I think when we do it from our feet, and you probably know from when you've done it too, the thing that gets the most tired and takes the most wear and tear is my shoulder when I go from my toes. So I might be fine in my torso here, but just my shoulder is exhausted. So that's why I brought it down to the knees. But what I found was, even from the knees, and it almost lets the torso take more of the load, and even from the knees, which should be easier, I found that athletes were falling apart somewhere between 30 and 60 seconds and losing their position or getting like overly laterally flexed or rolling forward or not able to hold that position properly. So that's where we start. We start just with this nice, can I do this? Do I have the stamina? Because I think of stabilizers as more stamina muscles than, they're not power producers. Their job is to stabilize. So do we have a foundation of stamina in those stabilizers to then move forward and work on some of the less sexy ones, like some rotary power drills and that kind of thing? If you've trained with one of my programs, or I've designed a program for you, you may have been one who asked me the question. I don't get as much as I used to, but they'll say, oh, like there's no core work in there, so like can I just do like an ab circuit? And my answer is always that look, like what are you talking about? But it's that core training should really be part of your functional training. So it's when I'm on the ice, I'm not like, well, now I'm going to use my core. Now I'm going to push with my legs. It's all integrated. And that's the way it is in our off-ice training too. So a lot of the exercises that we do have that element of core stabilization just integrated right in. If I'm doing a half kneeling groin, lift or chop, I'm using my hips and I'm using my abdominals or the muscles of my torso, and I'm using my arms. We don't do a lot just in isolation. If I'm doing a contralateral single leg dumbbell deadlift, well, I'm using the muscles of my back integrated with the lateral muscles of my hip, my glutes, right up into, maybe I'm adding a row at the bottom too, so now I'm tying in my lats and I'm working that whole chain rather than just, oh, well, now I'm going to do ab exercises. Goalie specific stamina is one that sometimes you get into a bit of a debate, and there really is no need for a debate. Common sense tells you, hey, I'm a goalie, I'm on the ice the entire game. That's an hour, so I should go out and do some sort of cardio for an hour. That is way off base. When you look at heart rate data from goaltenders playing games, and these would be college goaltenders, NCAA Division I goaltenders, their heart rate isn't like that. Like if you went for a 5-mile run, your heart rate's going to go up, it's going to stay fairly steady, and it's going to come back down. Well, a goaltender, it'll be very low, come up a bit, drop back down, come up a bit, drop back down, come up a bit, drop back down. So then those of you who are smart will be like, yeah, I know. That's why I do HIIT training. I do high intensity interval training, which is true. That is the type of training we should do. But again, what's the right mixture? What's the right combination? And we cover a spectrum. So I'm not trying to say, oh, this is the one right interval for you. But the tendency, again, is to go too hard for too long. Like a 60-second interval. Common sense tells us, well, a penalty kill is 2 minutes long, so I should be able to go hard for 2 minutes. Yeah, but in actual fact, how often are you, and I mean moving at high intensity during that 2 minutes? It's going to be maybe 30 seconds, and then there's some sort of a down period. Not to say it's actual total rest or even a whistle, but there's going to be some sort of downtime. When we look at heart rate data from actual games, a goalie's heart rate hardly ever gets up into the red zone, like almost never gets into the red zone. Their heart rates are much lower than their skater teammates. And I know, again, you won't like to hear that, and I know too from my experience. I'm not saying you're not tired. I know, like, your legs are dead, you're breathing hard, but just physiologically your cardiovascular system isn't being challenged as hard as we want to make it in some of those intervals. So usually the longest I'll go is 30 seconds, and then we can monkey around with the rest ratios as well. But a key element as well is, like, running for those intervals. We'll do some shuttle runs, and I think those have good value because we can measure them and there's a change of direction. But just straight running around a track, I think, has very little value because we're training our respiratory system or our cardiorespiratory system, but we're not really training the muscular endurance that our legs need because it isn't that very taxing. There isn't really a lot of range of motion or a lot of load on our legs when we're running, even though I know they get tired. So when we do goalie specific stamina training, it's got more elements of vertical agility, and by vertical agility I just mean the agility you use when you recover from your skates or get down, that kind of thing. So we might do a ladder drill from a really good low bent knee position with precision. We might do that for 10 seconds and then go into what I call post holds. So just getting really low, you know, like as if the puck's behind the net. And I'm going to hold that post hold for 10 seconds. And then I might go into an alternate knee recovery. Boom, 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 boom. And then come over here into another post hold for 10 seconds. So really that's a 40-second interval. That's a relatively long interval, but it's split up into different types of movement patterns, different types of demands on my muscles. Do you see what I mean? So that's how you really like the Reader's Digest version of how you train off the ice to perform better on the ice. You will have to work hard, and you'll have to work very, very hard at times, but you have to be working hard on the right things. You have to be thinking about, hey, what is the actual physiological response on the ice that I'm trying to get, that I need to train? It makes no sense to train, you know, like a miler so that you could run a 1500 in, you know, under 5 minutes. That isn't the kind of energy system that you need. It makes no sense to run 10 miles at a slow, steady state, because that isn't the type of energy system that you need. You need that quick sprint energy system, and then you need to be able to recover very, very quickly. And then sometimes you need that a little bit elongated sprint, sort of that 200-meter sprint time. But again, we're not going to get that by doing 200-meter sprints, because we need to have the acceleration, deceleration, change of direction, static holds. It seems simple, and I try to make it simple when I give you exercises, but there's a lot of thought that has to go into these things, because there are a lot of different systems at work. I hope it helps you appreciate how stretching isn't the answer to improving your mobility on the ice. Again, almost anything will give you some sort of result, but we're trying to get the best results for your time that you're investing. Strength training, getting out of that just neutral stance, so working some staggered stance, some frontal plane movements, and then single leg. Speed and power, it's the same. It shouldn't all be sagittal plane, because you really don't make your bread and butter there. It's got to be frontal plane and vertical agility element to it as well. So this is Maria from GoalieTrainingPro.com. I want to hear from you. I want to know where you feel that you're most lacking, because that's what steers me in the direction of, hey, what videos should I shoot next? What do you guys want to see the most, so that I can then put it together and help you stop more pucks, get more shutouts, have your phone blow up when you come off the ice, like, oh man, yeah, everybody wants a piece of me. Yeah. See you next time. Cheers.